discussions there. Do you want to get into some overvalued, undervalued wide receivers and running backs?
Sure, I'm ready.
So let's start with overvalued wide receivers. So I sent you my list, and we've chosen the only player that we've gotten on our list, which is good. It's going to open up for more discussion. And I think we should touch on him first. One of my overvalued wide receivers and one of your overvalued wide receivers is Cooper Kupp. Anybody who's listened to this show knows my undying affection for Robert Woods. And again, the philosophical change that we saw at the end of the year with the Rams offense, right, where Gerald Everett went down, Tyler Higbee went crazy, right? And remember, this all coincides with a soft tight end schedule of those last 4 games. Now, it's nothing to sneeze at that he had 100 yards in each of those games, but that gives you a little bit more context, because I feel like Higbee is like, people are just forgetting that Everett's there. And now you have to buy into the idea that they're completely going away from what they were doing before, and not changing the game plan to succeed where those weaknesses are with those other teams. So Cooper Kupp just needs I think that what he's going to depend on this year, and this is what I don't want to depend on, is he's going to be touchdown dependent this year, I think that
I agree.
He's all over the red zone. That's where they use him, right? Robert Woods is going to have all the catches in between the 20s, right? And I think that's where the value is going to come in. He's due for some positive touchdown regression. Cooper Kupp is going the other way, I believe, this year. And I don't think that he's going to have anywhere near the numbers that he did last year. For him to be, in ADP on Fantasy Pros, 15th wide receiver off the board? Is that right?
Well, I had him as wide receiver 10 when I looked, but I don't know if I was looking at standard or PPR. He's going too high. Yeah.
In PPR, he's 15. In standard, he's 10 because the touchdown thing we talked about. 15 is too high for me. In that range, I have to pull it up, actually. In that range, there's a few guys that I would like there instead of him, and I'm going to pull it up right now. So for wide receiver, right, we said 15. Let's see. My thing's taking forever. All right, 15. So, yeah, he's 15.
You got Thielen, you got Cooper, you got Beckham all right ahead of him,
Calvin,
and you got
Ridley,
Brown, Ridley, and Sutton. Yeah.
Give me Ridley. Give me all those guys pretty much at this point over him. Again, we might end up at the end of the year saying that Robert Woods was the wide receiver 1, and that's truly in my heart of hearts what I believe is going to happen.
Well, I'm right there with you. So to kind of piggyback on that, I'm looking at the same thing. I have Kupp probably in that wide receiver 20 range. 20 to 24. He's still a wide receiver 2, but I have Woods at the top end of wide receiver 2. So I've got him flipped. So that's why I had Woods as an undervalued wide receiver, because he's going, according to this, he's wide receiver 19 and Kupp is 15. Those should be switched, right? I definitely think Bobby Trees is going to have a better year than little Cooper Kupp.
Love it.
Right. So I'm just saying, I think Woods is a guy I'd rather have. Of the two, give me Woods all day. PPR or non doesn't even matter, because I think I'm right there with you too. I think that the touchdown numbers really inflated a little bit of what Kupp got done. Not to say he can't do that again, but touchdowns are the most volatile stat in fantasy. It's impossible to predict them year to year. There is just literally zero correlation on that. The offense has changed too much. The lines changed too much. Every moment in a game matters to get a touchdown, and there's no way to replicate that. So I think if you go on volume, you go on obviously the basic presence on how a team drives. I think you're going to see Woods be better. And to even hit on your Higbee point, I've been saying that for a long time. I actually owned Higbee in one league last year. A share of Higbee, I should say. And what I ended up doing at the end of the year, he blew up, right? And it helped me propel me to a title. And I'm not going to lie, that was the reason I won that title, right? Him. And I just got lucky. That's what it always takes a little bit of luck. But then in the offseason, he was the first piece I sold, right? I'm like, there's no way that any more hype can get on this guy. And I got rid of him. And I think that's something that I see a lot happening is you got to know when to get in and when to get out. And I think in dynasty terms and thinking of it like a stock market and all of that, we're always looking for values. We're always looking for guys to buy low and sell high and in shares of them, right? So I think Higbee is one of those guys this year. I don't know if I really trust him as much as the market does. So to kind of keep on the Rams, I didn't list Higbee as anyone. We're not talking about tight ends, but I do think Higbee is somebody that I am more than happy to have as a tight end too, right? Like a backup tight end or a flex option. Because if he ends up blowing up like everybody says he is, then you've got a great option. But I don't like leaning on him as my first choice. Right. So, I think that offense is going to kind of settle back to where it was 2 years ago. You're going to see Woods be the guy. Kupp is going to be a PPR guy in a way, but I still think he's behind Woods. And then you're going to have Higbee and Everett both kind of fighting for those tight end targets. It's just going to be a mess.
For sure. And that's it. I don't think anything more needs to be said when it comes to that. So why don't you give me another overvalued wide receiver that you have?
Sure. So this one's tough for me. It's DeAndre Hopkins. So
Wow.
I talked about this when I was on the FF Astronauts podcast, right? When the Fantasy Astronauts with Jetpack Galileo and Mike Risch. And I think it's tough for me to see how he gets the volume in that offense, right? DeAndre Hopkins is fine with any quarterback you put on him and all of this. But
As
when
long
he
as he's
played
not
for
Brock
Houston,
Osweiler.
that's true. But even with Brock, he wasn't as bad. He was still a wide receiver 1. But the catch is he didn't have anybody taking targets from him in Houston. He was the funnel. He was the choke point for that entire offense. Going to a new offense that loves to spread it out and run 4 receivers, I just don't know if his volume is going to be there. And I'm not saying it won't. I'm saying I don't know if it will. And that uncertainty for me causes me to pass on him more often than draft him. So right now he's wide receiver 5, I believe, in standard, and he's going wide receiver 3 in PPR. That to me is too high. No. I would much rather have Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, Kenny Galladay. Like, no offense to Hopkins, but those guys are all on offenses where they're staying essentially the same, right? Yeah, Godwin's getting a new quarterback, but essentially it's an upgrade from Jameis to Tom Brady. Good God.
Too.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, you've got guys like DJ Moore, who I think is a potential stud in the wings and could be a top 3 wide receiver after this. Moore. So I'm saying, like, I don't hate DeAndre Hopkins. I just would rather have him at that kind of 10 to 12 back end wide receiver 1 range. So overvalued at the top is really getting nitpicky because it's just feeling and gut. But I still think Hopkins at wide receiver 3 in PPR, that is too rich for me. I will pass. Someone else can have that. And if it blows up, I don't mind. But at least I don't have to worry about the stress being on my team.
For sure. And then to the point that I made earlier, too, about the middle rounds, and there's so many, like Calvin Ridley is going to blow up this year. Calvin Ridley is going to beat Godwin. And I know that I'm not the only person saying that, and I didn't steal it from anybody, but I think we're all locked in step where we feel like here's a guy that's about to take the next step, right?
The writing's on the wall. Yep.
That's what would push me away from somebody like Hopkins, right? I can run and get another running back, and then double back and still get someone who has the same sort of upside. The only thing that I would say is that I think the volume is going to be there for him just because Arizona runs 70, 75 plays, right? And then again, their defense isn't good. They're going to be behind, right? And even with Kenyon Drake, they toss the ball a lot, right? So I think he'll be fine. But again, 3 is too much. 3 is way too high. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Calvin really finished 3rd. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be shocked.
No. And I think that to me, that's looking at it more of that 3 is Hopkins' ceiling. I don't like drafting guys at their ceiling unless you're number 1, right? Christian McCaffrey's ceiling is number 1. Well, yeah, I'm taking him number 1. But to me, Hopkins has a wider range. His floor is lower, and that pushes him down a little bit more because there are other guys that have the same ceiling that for some reason are going in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, like Ridley, for instance, who has the same ceiling. Well, I'd rather take a risk on that later than a risk at the 1st round. You know what I mean? Like, wide receiver 3 in PPR is essentially 1st, 2nd turn. You're looking at the back end of the 1st. That to me is too rich. I'm out.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Hey, Andrew, I didn't want to and we're having a great conversation, but we gotta hurry this along a little bit. We're like maybe 10, 15 more minutes. So I'm gonna try to get through this. Maybe we just do running backs this time, and then you can always come back on the show. I would love to have you again, and we can talk wide receivers and stuff, right? So we may have.
Sounds good.
Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
It's my fault. The season is ramping up right now, so I have to jump on a 49ers podcast right after this, and it's a lot. I mean, I'm happy football's back, but it is a lot.
We're all in the same boat, man. Right there. Let's go. What do you got then for undervalued wide receiver? Let's go the other way for a second.
Oh, so we can do undervalued. Yes. My first one, this one is easy, right? We're talking about end of the draft guys, right? And it's just, I feel like nobody is mentioning this guy and they don't understand what he can offer you. And that's Preston Williams. I've been a big believer of Preston Williams. Remember, he slid in the draft because of character issues, but he flashed in the preseason with Josh Rosen, with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, if you think back to last year, Preston Williams was the target leader. And then Devontae Parker went on to lead the team in targets once Preston Williams got injured, right? I suspect another year, all the reports out of camp are glowing, and you can have Preston Williams in one of your last 2 rounds if you do it the right way. He's screaming value. He's the 53rd wide receiver off the board. That doesn't make any sense. In dynasty leagues, go get him. The smarter guys are going to know to keep him. But in redraft leagues, this guy is screaming value at you at the end of the draft. And I've been gobbling him up everywhere that I can. I just been holding on to him, and I'm waiting because I love the player. I love the situation. They should be throwing the ball a ton. And there is a world where Williams and Parker can both return their value at the right spot. And I think this is the year. And I think that Preston Williams really this year is going to leave his mark on the league, and people are going to really take notice. And then next year is when he'll be drafted appropriately.
I'm right there with you. And I love that pick too. I am one of those people that tends to draft Preston Williams before everybody else. And then I get those reactions of like, already you're reaching now. Like, no, I just want to make sure he's on my team because I think yeah. So again, going back to that same PFN redraft league that we're in right now, I got him at 9-5. And that's a little early for some people, but my logic was.
But you're in a savvy draft.
Well, exactly. It's an expert draft, and a couple of the guys in this draft are Dolphins fans, and I'm drafting right beside one who I know is a big Preston Williams fan. Shout out to Corey on that one. But the catch is, Preston Williams, for me, is a guy who is a perfect flex option. You know, he's someone that you can lock in as a flex role every week. He doesn't need to carry your team, but he can have that boom bust. He can get you 100 yards. He can get you 2 touchdowns in any given week. Now, that's frustrating because his floor could also be 2 catches for 25 yards. That, to me, is a prime flex candidate. I want someone like that in my flex spot who gives me a little bit more risk. I don't like necessarily taking someone with that kind of risk profile in my, starting positions, but the more flexes you have, the more risk you can have on your team, the more availability you are to do these reaches in drafts. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Preston Williams is a stud in the making, and I think he's criminally undervalued right now.
For sure. So what's one of your undervalued wide receivers, Andrew?
Sure. So again, looking kind of more at the top, just because I feel like that's where everybody's got an opinion on these guys, and it makes it for more fun conversation. But for me, Allen Robinson is one of those guys that is just always ignored. I don't know why. I guess it's because of Trubisky or Foles. Right now he's going at wide receiver 16 in standard, wide receiver 10 in PPR. I'm okay with 10 in PPR. I get the logic, but 16 in standard is too low. Right. To me, he's easily a top 6, top 10 receiver. And he's one of those guys that you can take as your first receiver in the 4th round. Right. He's one of those guys that falls in ADP. And in some cases, you can see him in your home leagues go even later. So an ADP of wide receiver 10 in PPR is pretty accurate. And I don't mind that. But in standard leagues, he's, for whatever reason, getting ignored. And I don't get it.
Right. I actually have been doing that same thing, right? So the reason that I join so many dynasty startups and I do them is because I kind of want to just practice, right? I want to see how my team, like I take different chances in every league. I don't stick to everything. I want to see what my team looks like at the end, right? I've been ending up with Allen Robinson and Calvin Ridley. I'm not certain that you compare two, especially at their price. Allen Robinson is as safe as it gets. And I think that everybody's scared because of Trubisky. But what are you afraid of? Last year, he was a wide receiver 1 with Trubisky. And if Nick Foles comes in and plays even a smidge better than that, then you already know that he's going to be fine. Look, he's one of the elite route runners, elite separators, elite contested catch guys, right? Like, he's a joy to watch run routes. And I think that because he's over there in Chicago, people don't understand that. And imagine how we would talk about Allen Robinson if he didn't start his career with Blake Bortles and then move right into Mitchell Trubisky. Like,
yeah, poor guy. Oh my God, that's just brutal.
This is a guy succeeding all with everything stacked against him,
in spite of it.
Right.
Yep.
So that's why I like him there. Like, and if you're pairing him with someone else and he's your wide receiver too, good God. Like, that's your perfect balance of floor and upside. That's Allen Robinson, and I could not agree with you anymore on that. I really, I'm getting him anywhere that I can.
There are some mock drafts that I've been doing recently for PFN. We do like a mock draft Monday where every Monday we try to do a couple mock drafts and kind of get people ready. But this season's been a little weird just because there's so much question marks about everything. But I've been taking him as like the 5th or 6th receiver off the board in mock drafts just to see, even if I take him where I believe he should go. Because again, ADP is a tool. It's not meant to be that's where he should go.
Right.
It's more like that's where people take him. So you can use that and then say, all right, well, he's got an ADP of 16, so I can wait a little bit and get him maybe in the 3rd or 4th instead of reaching for him in the 2nd. So sometimes in those mock drafts, I'll reach for him early and take him into 5th or 6th receiver because he deserves that. And I like my team, but I also know I could wait around and get a better running back in the 2nd and then get Robinson in the 3rd. So for me, that's kind of the useful part of ADP and for mock drafting entirely is see where the market goes, see what you do, and see how your teams look. Like you were saying, using it as practice. Allen Robinson is one of those guys I have no problem at all getting because he is so silent. No one talks about him. He's going to be a stud for sure.
For sure. I like that a lot too. So I'll go with another undervalued wide receiver. Michael Gallup. I understand, guys, the hesitance, right? There's CeeDee Lamb there, Amari Cooper, he was one of my overvalued, and here's why. Michael Gallup has been he sees the number 2 corner a lot, right? And he's better than almost every number 2 corner over there, right? So, you've got a new offense with Mike McCarthy where they They're going to throw the ball more. And they lead the world in vacated targets. Jason Witten's not there anymore. Randall Cobb left. And you'd be surprised at how many targets Randall Cobb got last year, right? This is why we all like Blake Jarwin, right? There's a world where CD, Blake Jarwin, Gallup, and Cooper can all perform for your team, and just depending on what you need. Like Blake Jarwin, I think is going to get the short end of the stick because everything that I read about CD Lamb, oh my goodness, man, watching him run routes, like he was my number one wide receiver off the board, and he fell to a team that didn't need him but took him because they were just like, you know, we could possibly move off of Amari Cooper and keep Michael Gallup and CD Lamb and be fine and probably not miss a step. So the reason that I feel that Amari Cooper is overvalued, right? At 13th wide receiver off the board, if I'm not mistaken, right? 13th?
Yep, 13.
13th wide receiver off the board. My issue with Amari Cooper is that there are far too many games where he goes silent. Like cornerbacks that are tough and they press him and they start to knock him off his routes, he kind of just goes away and he's ghost. I don't need guys like that on my team, right? Tyreek Hill will do that, but it's not because someone's pressing him. It's just because they went somewhere else with but he can win you weeks. He'll boom for you and win those weeks. Amari Cooper can do that, but I'm not ready to have him there at the 13th, right? Michael Gallup, on the other hand, with all these vacated targets, he's going to take another step. He was incredible last year, and nobody talked about it, and everybody seems to just be off of him completely to where his ADP is depressed to, let me see, what is it? He's the
32.
32nd wide receiver off the board? What? Let me just, for argument's sake, right? Let's look around who's there with him, right? Julian Edelman, Will Fuller. I want him over Marquise Brown. I want him over Jarvis Landry. The reason that I want him over those guys, I want him over Devontae Parker also. The reason that I want him over those guys is because, again, you're not drafting him at your ceiling. There's no way that he's going to end up the 32nd wide receiver at the end of the year. He has top 15 potential, top 20 for sure. Now, if you're talking about that sort of upside in a pass-friendly offense with Mike McCarthy now, and the guy is really good. Like, I just watched the tape, and I watched him run routes. He's incredible, man. Michael Gallup is sliding in drafts, and if he's your wide receiver 3 or 4, that's incredible. That is incredible.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Both of those guys, same kind of for the Rams. I'd much rather have Gallup at his price than Cooper at his, right? Amari Cooper has a long history of zeros. I can't tell you how many times I've lost a game by 3 points, and I'm looking at Amari 0 going, just
one
something.
Right.
All you need, yeah. So I'm right there with you. And just to kind of reference this, PFN just released Philip Caldwell's consistency score, and this is kind of a new way of looking at week-to-week scoring in fantasy. A lot of people like yearly rankings this time of year. But week-to-week consistency, like we were just talking about, that's what wins you weeks. Amari Cooper last year ranked 22nd in consistency, and that was a terrific year for him.
For sure.
And it was still 22nd in this consistency score model. So to me, what that says is he's a great flex option. To go back to what I was saying before, I would love to have Amari Cooper as my flex. That's not where you're drafting him. You're drafting him as your wide receiver 2 in almost every situation, or even a wide receiver 1.
Right.
So the catch is, if I'm going to get a guy that volatile, that inconsistent at that price, that's too risky for me. I'd much rather get other running backs, tight ends, whoever, and then, I guess fall in luck with Gallup later on, right? And get that guy his consistency was 31 last season, which obviously sounds bad. It's right where his ADP is, but it's better than his ADP.
Right.
He's more consistent than the price you're paying. So at that point, you're getting a good value for him. And I do think I'm with you. I think his ceiling is just as high as Cooper on a week-to-week basis. So why not? Let's play the upside game here. Let's get Gallup.
For sure. Do you want to give me one more undervalued, and I'll give you my last one?
Sure, yeah. So the last one that I want to mention, and I brought up Robert Woods earlier, so I don't need to bring him up, but the other one I definitely want to bring up, which I get it, but at the same time I'm confused by it, is JuJu SmithSchuster. I get that he had a bad year last year. Ben missed the whole season. They were playing with some quarterbacks that I don't even know if they're in the league anymore, right? They're just horrible quarterbacks.
Yeah, real bad.
They shouldn't be. But the point I'm getting at is he's going at wide receiver 11 right now. Now, to me, I get why he's wide receiver 11. I get it. There's some uncertainty and all of this. Ben is saying he's coming back healthier than ever. The surgery needed to happen. He said he's had pain for 12 years, right?
12 years,
now
right?
You've seen Deontay Johnson take a step up. James Washington take a step up. You got James Conner in the backfield who should be healthy at least to start the season. I am saying that JuJu SmithSchuster is one of those guys who is a top 10 receiver. And if he's going at 11, you're nitpicking on that. But in my opinion, the ceiling for JuJu is wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
Right. You're looking at another, and I'd rather have him at wide receiver 11 in that ADP and getting that value than Hopkins, who I brought up before. Right.
Sure.
So JuJu is going to be on a high powered offense a great line, with a great running game, with a great defense. They're going to have to move the ball, obviously, to win the games anyway, even if it's low scoring. I think JuJu is the guy. And I think, again, he's like Allen Robinson. He's just going ignored right now.
Right. And I think that, we have to remember the last time that we saw JuJu on the field with Ben, right? Ben was largely terrible in the year that he led the league in passing. I mean, it just happened that he threw 600 times and he threw for 5,000 yards, right? I'm with you on that one, though. Like, if you're going to start your draft with a receiver and then you're going to go receiver, imagine pairing him with, like, Devontae Adams.
Julio. Yeah, Julio. Yeah, exactly.
Mike Evans. That is a positional advantage because, like you said, JuJu's ceiling is much higher, and he's not being drafted at that. So, like, yes, I completely agree. And there is a world where JuJu SmithSchuster can completely outscore DeAndre Hopkins. There is that world.
Yeah. And I'm seeing him go in like 5th and 6th rounds even in some PPR drafts with QB. It's like I don't get that. That's to me, I'd rather have him over Cooper Kupp.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
I'd rather have him over Robert Woods, who we were talking about before,
Sure.
who I think is great value. But again, I think he's going behind some of these guys because they're getting hype and he's not.
Right.
So he's not getting talked about. People are ignoring and forgetting about him. I think he's someone you could easily grab in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round and be very happy with at the end of the year.
Right. Well, recency bias is a hell of a thing, man. Like, just people just remember what they saw last year. But like you said, Mason Rudolph's not an NFL quarterback. Neither is Duck Hodges. I think there was the game that Mason Rudolph played against the 49ers. He threw 3 passes past the line of scrimmage. One of them was a 40-yard bomb to Deontay Johnson. The other ones were like right in front of the line of scrimmage, where literally 3 guys came up and tackled. So to get Ben back is already a bump, right? Now, if Ben is anywhere near where he was 2 years ago, again, he doesn't have to be good at football to be good for fantasy. And I think that I want people to get that out of their head because Ben did look largely awful his last year. But he threw for 5,000 yards. He threw the ball 600 times. So that all you need is volume, right? It doesn't matter if it's efficient volume. It just matters if it's volume, right? So
yeah, and he's going to have volume. Yeah,
for sure. And if JuJu kicks back inside to the slot, then it's over. Then leave Deontay Johnson and James Washington over there, and now JuJu's really going to dominate.
That's what I was just going to say. Like, I think the real reason you saw JuJu struggle is because he was asked to be Antonio Brown, right? And when he played alongside Antonio Brown and was not getting that outside coverage, he did really well. When they moved him to the outside and kind of put the focus on him, the defense put the focus on him, it just didn't quite work. Well, now that we've seen Deontay Johnson kind of come into his own, James Washington gets another year, I think those guys, like you just said, those guys are going to get those outside coverage, and you're going to start to see those mismatches in the middle where JuJu can shine. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he's a stellar pick in the 5th round if you can get in there.
For sure. And Deontay Johnson has shown that he can separate. That's really what it is. That's why everybody's on Deontay Johnson. Nobody's on Deontay Johnson because he performed last year. It's because if you watch the film, he's open by a wide margin, and he just happened to be playing with 2 terrible quarterbacks. So I think that's why everybody's in on Deontay Johnson as well, too. And that, that makes a lot of sense. If they're even able to get to 550 pass attempts, both of those guys will be fine for you. Fine. Agreed.
Yep.
All right. My last undervalued wide receiver is Sterling Shepard. 47th. So look, I know why everybody's off of Sterling Shepard, right? Injuries, a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, right? Shepard, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, Darius Slayton, who everybody likes, and let's not forget the Saquon Barkley's there as well too, right? I just feel like Sterling Shepard's being a little bit disrespected right now because when he was on the field last year with Daniel Jones, he led the team in targets. And that will continue, I believe. And that's the thing. Now, when we're talking about the 47th wide receiver off the board, it is very feasible that you already have 3 receivers, maybe 4 at this point, and he could be your 5th. Imagine getting a wide receiver 1 at the 47th off the board. You're not going to get – like, you might be banking that person takes it, there, but he's guaranteed as long as he's on the field to be that guy. Now, are you willing to take the chance with him because of his injuries? I am if he's my 4th or 5th wide receiver because the ceiling is too high. Like, he could end top 25 easily, and he'll have those blow-up games where the Giants, they're bad on defense. They're going to be trying to throw themselves back into games. Now, the only concern that I have with many Giants skill position players is this death schedule that they have to start the year with. You're starting with Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Philly, and then it's like I forget what the first four are. Like, for you people that are going to go get Daniel Jones at the end of your draft, make sure you have another quarterback the first few weeks because the people who are relying on him to be their one quarterback, they're going to drop him after week 3 when he doesn't do anything, like worth it, for them.
Yeah, and the schedule's bad at the end of the year too, I think, right? It's just it's a man, that is it. They've got a brutal schedule. I'm right there with you.
They do, and that's the only thing that could really scare you. But again, pass attempt, volume, behind in games. So Sterling Shepard could garbage time his way into some points for you. I still love him at that price at 47th, and I've been grabbing him in almost every draft that I have just to feel safe. And just to add a little bit of depth where, like, I don't want to be stuck starting somebody in a bye week out of necessity, hoping they do something. I'd rather start somebody that I know if he's on the field playing, he'll get 6 to 7 targets, and he'll have to do something with that.
No, he's a perfect bye week fill-in. He's somebody that gets you better than a goose egg, right? That's the whole point.
Sure.
I think what's strange is you're seeing what I'm looking at here on Fantasy Pros ADP with PPR. You got Slayton 46, Shepard 47, Tate 52. So all three of them are kind of right there together. And in my mind, I understand the upside of Slayton. I'm okay with taking him first. I'm okay with that. But I'm agreeing with you in the sense that Shepard is being slept on too. He is the wide receiver one in that offense. He is probably the most veteran guy on that offense. Tate may be older, but I'm pretty sure Shepard's been there longer. And you're going to see games where Slayton is going to have 0 and then he's going to have 23, right? Shepard is the kind of guy that, especially in PPR, he'll get you 10 points almost every week. That's exactly somebody, if you've got a lot of risk at the top, to go back to what I was talking about before, you got to balance your team out. If you've got a lot of risky guys, you've taken a lot of flyers, you've reached on guys, Shepard is the perfect guy to let fall to you in the 10th round and just to be a security blanket and say, all right, well, now I've at least got 10 points from him. I don't have to worry too much. It's not like my floor is going to be that low. I will say that I think his floor as a positional player can't get much lower than that. So at that point, you're almost guaranteed to get your value out of him. At wide receiver 47, I don't see how he performs worse than that.
No.
So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think there's nothing but upside in that pick. Now, it doesn't have maybe the volatility upside that you get from Slayton,
right.
But like a week-to-week score. But at the same time, Shepard is a prime candidate for someone in that range that you can just sort of, fit on your bench and then end up starting him by week 3 because he's just that good.
For sure. And then the last point, and then we can end on this. The last point about Slayton, and I think that everybody is in love with the talent and what they saw, but you have to remember when he really popped off on those weeks, it was when Tate, Shepard, Ingram, all those guys were down. It's hard for me to see where Slayton fits in this pecking order because I have a feeling that he's going to be behind all of the pass catchers and Saquon. That's my issue. Now, if you're taking Darius Slayton, I think that's baked into his ADP and his risk, that you understand that you're taking him because you want to play him in the right matchup and you want that boom week. Like when they go and they play Washington, right? You suspect that game should go back and forth. That's probably when you're going to be really comfortable starting Darius Slayton and hoping for a big week. Again, it's all about how you prepare through your draft. Are you risk averse? Are you on with risk and things like that? And if you're taking risky picks or guys that are winning the weeks early, like you said, early in your draft, then make sure that you get the safer guys. If you're doing it safe, then make sure you go and get your upside guys. And I think me and you, all we did was agree this entire pod, like pretty much.
I know. Really a boring podcast. Not a lot of arguing, right?